was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello,
Hello.
I'm Penny ST, and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. Today we'll have our second in the series of interviews discussing different federation proposals to try to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Amen. We have the honor of speaking with Emanuel Shahaf, who serves as co-chair of the Federation Movement. The Federation Movement promotes an equitable and modern federal state of Israel on the territory of the land of Israel between the Jordan River and the sea, not including the Gaza Strip. All inhabitants of the state will be equal citizens whose rights will be secured by a federal constitution. They'll be able to exercise their religious and cultural uniqueness in 30 cantons. The regional government in each canton will reflect the composition of the local population by which it was elected and will fulfill all the duties of government, not including national defense, foreign affairs, and other cross-cantonal duties, which are within the responsibility of the federal government in Jerusalem. Emanuel was born in Germany and immigrated to Israel in 1972. He worked for 14 years in the office of the Prime Minister in Tel Aviv, serving in various positions at home and abroad. He has been a member and worked for the Labor Party since the early 1990s. He studied aeronautical engineering at the Technion, the Israel Institute of Technology, and has a bachelor's and master's of science and an MBA. Since 2014, Emanuel has promoted a federation as a realistic approach to resolve the conflict with the Palestinians in the land of Israel. He has also helped develop Israeli business relations in Indonesia. He serves as CEO of Technology Asia Consulting Limited, Vice Chairman of the Israel-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, and Vice Chairman of the Israeli-German Society. He recently published his autobiography, Identity, The Quest for Israel's Future, available at Amazon in English and Hebrew and soon in Arabic. Welcome, Emanuel.
Good to be here.
Emanuel, how would you describe the Federation movement?
Well, you read it out pretty nicely. It's a modern state, a federal state, similar to 29 or almost 30 other federal countries in the world, with the regional governments in regions or provinces or states or Länder, however you call it. We call them cantons, based on the Swiss model. giving equal rights to every citizen and local government.
So, if not two states.
But first, let's remember on the 29th of November, Kaftet November, that's the day of the partition proposal in 1947. 1947 was how many? 53 and 22. It's 75 years ago. 75 years ago, the United Nations General Assembly voted on the partition proposal and voted in favor of partition of the area of the Palestine Mandate to divide it into two states, and the Jewish part of the population agreed to the division, and the Palestinians did not. And ever since then, we've had this problem of the not divided. Divided or not divided, and the division has not been successful. Okay, ever since it started, it wasn't successful, and it's not likely going to succeed either. So that's our premise. Our premise is that there will not be two states. There will only be one state in some kind of form, and the one we're proposing, the federation, is likely going to be the better proposal.
Well, I wanted to ask, what's the history of your movement?
The history of our movement, it's originated by a friend of mine, my co-chair, Aryeh Hess, who thought of it while active in the Labour Party. We were both in the Labour Party. He is the kind of guy who's always a little ahead of the curve, and advancing proposals already in the 70s and 80s. He was advancing proposals of federations with Jordan, and he came up with this proposal, which I originally thought was a little bit crazy, but by the time 2014 or so came around, I understood that that's the only way to go, and since then I've been moving it ahead, and he's still active with us.
Have you shared the federation movement with many Israelis and Palestinians?
Yeah, we try. We're mostly active on the Israeli side of the field. This is an Israeli proposal. It's not an Israeli-Palestinian proposal, and that's for a simple reason that the way the Israeli mind goes, that if the more Palestinians we have on board with this, the more the Israelis are going to say, "Oh, wait a second, there's something wrong with this." Okay, so we're moving primarily in Israel with this proposal, and we have, of course, Palestinians who we confer with and we meet with to share with them and to make sure that we're on the right track, but we don't propose it as a joint proposal.
I see. So before we get much further, what I'd like to do is show a little clip which also has an overview of your proposal.
If the words, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, make you feel like going to sleep, you're not alone. Demonstrations, settlements, territories, people keep talking about it and nothing ever changes. The Israeli left wants peace, but the left leaders don't consider it a priority. The Israeli right doesn't like the present situation, but they really can't think of a better alternative. But the status quo is bad, both for Israelis and Palestinians. The conflict leads to terrorism and hurts Israel's relationships with other countries. Just ask Jews living outside Israel. But for Israelis, the most destructive thing about the conflict is the polarization and even hatred it leads to among Israelis. So if there's such a fundamental problem, why aren't we dealing with it? Because we've been taught for years that there are two possible solutions: two states or one state. The two-state solution seems impractical. It's hard to imagine that even a leftist government will be able to get hundreds of thousands of settlers out of the West Bank. The one-state solution, we've been told, will make it impossible for Israel to remain a Jewish state. But instead of accepting a situation that's only getting worse, we need to look for new solutions. And we think our proposal is worth checking out. A federal union. A federal union or federation can accomplish two goals: living together peacefully and not giving up what's most important to us. We suggest dividing Israel into 30 counties or cantons, like the northern canton in the Haifa region, the Ramallah and Sharon cantons in the center, and the Beersheba canton in the south. Each canton will be autonomous in things like the economy and education, so secular, religious, Jewish and Arab ways of life are protected. 60 new members will join the Knesset, our parliament, which will make sure that Israel remains a Jewish state. The Gaza Strip will not be part of the federation. Hopefully its residents will appreciate the regional prosperity it offers, which will inspire them to choose peace so they can enjoy it too. We think the Israeli way is not to learn to live with problems, it's to think outside the box, improvise and solve them. Our plan has a lot more to it. Leading academics and security experts wrote a detailed document, and we invite you to read it, comment and suggest improvements. Because if we can solve this issue, we can achieve anything.
The two states before Trump, well, what did they look like?
Well, you can see in the slide, you can see the small Palestinian state, which was taken out here for illustration purposes from the land of Israel. It's a scraggly little something which is barely connected, but it's one unit. Okay, it's one unit. That was the situation during the Obama years. That was the approximate way the borders went. And that was the last thing before Trump came along with his plan of the century. So it was, that's what it was. It wasn't something to write home about, but it looked like. The Trump proposal is a whole different story. It basically tore up the contiguity and made it very difficult to have one unit. Just to have an idea, the grand total of the borders between Israel and the Palestinian area is about 1,800 kilometers. Okay, so all those small parts, if you measure the length of the fence along them, it's about 1,800 kilometers. Sorry, it's not really a Palestinian state. It's more like an autonomous areas. Some people may call them Bantustans. Okay, it's not really a proposal that the Palestinians can live with, and they of course renounced it and didn't agree to it. And also Israel has some concerns because there are 15 Israeli enclaves within the Palestinian territories. It's not something to write home about, but that's what's on the table, the last thing on the table. Okay, so we're stuck with that to some degree.
Okay, so what are you proposing in terms of security?
Well, first of all, security is Israel's main concern. And what security really means is that we need to control the whole area. Okay, we need to control it. We have to be in the whole area. We can see especially, we can see that what happened when we left the Gaza Strip. Okay, it became a hotbed of terror, and we have to deal with it. So leaving the West Bank is not an option. Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned borders. You want secure borders. How do you propose to obtain those?
Well, the secure borders basically means that we don't have 1,800 kilometers of borders between all kinds of little units, but we have a normal border to a normal country along the outside borders of the country. The way the two-state solution looks at borders is you over there, we over here, and a very tall wall in the middle, which may be a good idea for a border, but it's a terrible proposal for a two-state solution because borders, of course, make it difficult to have economic exchange to any degree, and impacts on free movement. So there's a bind. You're going to have secure borders. What do you put inside the secure borders?
Can you please talk about the impact on the Palestinian economy?
Yeah. First of all, I think people should be aware of that the Palestinian economy completely and utterly depends on Israel. Okay, 55% of the Palestinian imports are from Israel. 80% of the Palestinian exports are to Israel. Palestine, the Palestinian territories are Israel's fifth biggest trade partner. More than 250,000 Palestinians work in Israel. Further, thousands of Palestinians work in the Palestinian areas for Israeli industries. So they're completely dependent on us. And creating a border between them and us in a two-state scenario would severely impact the economy. In any case, okay, to this or that degree, which would of course have impacts on the security situation, because when people don't have money, they are willing to do other things, and the terror organizations may pay them, and that's not good. So the Palestinian economy should be our main concern. The other side of the coin is, of course, the Israeli economy. Okay, as I said, it's the fifth biggest trade partner. There's a lot of Israeli industries which supply stuff to the Palestinians. There's a lot of workers who work here and sustain our economy. So having a border between the two areas is not going to be good for the economy, and that's going to be bad for it's going to have bad security implications.
Can you please explain the complexities of what might be perceived as dual loyalties with the Palestinians?
Yes. Dual loyalty is something that Americans, I think, are familiar with. In Israel, the situation is like this. At this stage, there is no Palestinian state. Okay, so the Arab citizens of Israel, they have their basic loyalty to the state of Israel. There is no other option. Okay, they can be loyal to the Palestinian cause, but there's no Palestinian state. If a Palestinian state would come into being, there would be the danger that some Arab citizens of Israel would feel loyalty toward the Palestinian state, and there would be another danger that if that would be expressed, that the Jews would want to say, hey, they have their own state, let's push them there in another Nakba. Okay. So it's a very problematic issue that comes up as a result of a Palestinian state coming into being, should that happen.
Well, then what?
Then what? Yeah, that's exactly what we see here in a soldier voting. The question is, what are we looking at? Okay, what are the options? The options are basically either two states or the status quo, or annexation and apartheid. Okay, at this time, nobody else has any other proposals. Okay, of course, a confederation is also a possibility, but a confederation requires, first of all, two states, and as we said, two states are unlikely to happen. So a confederation is also very unlikely to happen. So we are going to have to decide, because the apartheid issue is already on the agenda. The status quo presently creates situations, especially in the West Bank, where Palestinian residents are treated as second class citizens, and worse than that. And the international community is taking notice. So we have to avoid that under all circumstances.
Okay.
So
given the current situation, what would be the challenges for political implementability?
Yeah, well, what we're looking for, first, we need whatever solution we come up with, or whatever proposal we have, needs to have political implementability, which means it has to have the support not only of the left or of the right, but of both, okay? And that means that it has to adhere to universal rights for the left, and for the right, it means it should not entail withdrawal from the territories in the West Bank. and to combine these two, that's important in order to have more than a 61 majority in the 120 seat Knesset, because if there are difficult decisions to be made, we can't have it done by a very small majority. We need a bigger majority. So whatever proposal we come up with, it has to be able to go across lines.
Okay. And would this, how would the Palestinians react to your proposal?
Well, that's another condition. Okay, it should be acceptable to the Palestinians. Whatever we propose, obviously, we're going to have to do it with the Palestinians. So it should be acceptable to them, which doesn't mean it has to be acceptable, first of all, to the leadership. Okay, it has to be acceptable to the Palestinians, to the Palestinian people, not necessarily the leadership. On the other hand, it should also be possible to implement it unilaterally, because we don't want to be in a situation where we can't advance towards some kind of agreement because the Palestinians aren't the Palestinian leadership isn't cooperating. So that's what it needs to be. Yes.
What kind of impact on international
whatever we're coming up with needs to have international recognition, at least by the major powers, by the US and the European Union. We can see here in the picture, Angela Merkel is still the chancellor. It shows that's an older slide, but international recognition is of course necessary.
Who do you think would be on your side and who won't?
No, I think that what we're proposing, and we'll get to that a little bit further on, we'll get international recognition definitely from the United States and also from the Europeans. That's and hopefully also from the Palestinians. That's what a good proposal should be. It should also, and in order to get that support, it has to adhere, of course, to international law and human rights. Right. Maybe for a small period it can go by that, but on the long term it has to be equal rights, equal citizenship, full civil rights. It can't be anything other than that.
Okay. So what tangible economic benefits will the Palestinians see from this proposal?
The main thing is that it has to, whatever proposal we come up with has to have tangible benefits for the Palestinians, because the Palestinians are in dire economic straits. Okay, their GDP per capita is about 1/10 of that of Israel. Israel has about $40,000 per capita per year income, and the Palestinians have less than 4,000. Okay, so whatever we come up with has to give them tangible benefits, meaning in terms of employment and higher earnings. So that's a condition.
And how do you plan on safeguarding Israel's security?
Well, like I mentioned before, security is mainly about borders, but what we need is to have and we have to have control over the whole territory, not like the Gaza Strip. We have to have control over the whole territory, and the border should be the Jordan River, which is the national border. So a border along the Mediterranean, along the Jordan River, in the north along with Lebanon, and in Egypt, with Egypt along the Negev Desert. That would be the best solution, and I think everybody in Israel would agree on that.
So, how do you think the other Arab states would react?
Well, if we stick to the ideas of having an equitable state that adheres to universal rights and full citizenship, it would be acceptable to the neighbors. Okay, so but that's the condition. We can't have a situation where the Palestinians remain second-class citizens, because that would not be acceptable to the neighbors, even if they themselves don't have that kind of democracy. They still wouldn't go for it if we
How do you propose to get their approval?
Well, I don't think we need their approval ahead of time. We need when the Palestinians are on board, then we're okay with the neighbors. That's the main. There's a connection there, obviously.
Little
And if
little word if, but lots of work, huh?
yeah, lots of work.
So what about
Main
the
issues, of course.
refugee problem?
Main issues, of course, the refugees. It has to be dealt with in a deep and meaningful way, meaning that we have to deal with the refugees which are in the territory now and who are living in refugees camps. We have to deal with refugees who are outside Israel in the area here in Syria, in Jordan, and we also have to think about what to do with the refugees who are spread all over the world. It has to combine both compensation, resettlement of refugees in third countries, settlement of refugees, the ones who are here have to be settled in normal housing, and there has to be an agreement on the return of refugees in some kind of new scheme, which I call long-term normalization of immigration policy. The issue is mainly emotional and in terms of practical solutions, they can be found.
When you mention compensation, what are you referring to and to whom?
Compensation, well, the Palestinians who were displaced as part of the Nakba, as part of the War of Independence in 1948, should get some kind of compensation for the property they lost, okay? Assuming that they cannot get the property back, and I would not propose that, but they should be able to get some kind of compensation that would be arranged for by Israel in conjunction with other European and American donors. I think it's not. This is mainly an issue which has to be dealt with. It's not an insurmountable problem.
Okay. So, what are the safeguards in your proposal to address being flexible to the conditions on the ground?
Well, whatever proposal we come up with, and we haven't presented yet, it has to be flexible because there may be certain areas, not all Palestinians may be willing to join whatever proposal we have, and we have to make adjustments according to the demography and so on and so forth. So whatever plan we come up with, it has to be flexible to be able to make room for the possible changes.
Okay. Now you've told me that you prefer a federation over a
Yes,
unit state.
a federation.
What does it mean exactly?
Federation basically means regional government. Okay, it recognizes the fact that people are dispersed in the country in certain regions, and they concentrate in certain regions. And there are regions where one population is predominant over another. And this kind of dispersal has a lot of advantages. First of all, it makes it possible to separate in a positive way populations on ethnic basis or but it also permits a certain amount of independence and autonomy and economic development. That's why federations are vastly superior to unitary states for the most of it. And that's why we have already now more than 40% of the world's population, all those ones in the green areas, live in federations. And that's why we also propose a federation.
I see. You're proposing extending Israeli law to the West Bank. Can you talk about that very sensitive topic?
Yes. It's another way of saying annexation, but that's what we are proposing. In order to accomplish, to build a federation, we propose to extend Israeli law over the West Bank. And I don't know, can you see my cursor here? This is the West Bank area, the green area of the West Bank. Also about the Golan Heights. and not about the Gaza, not in the Gaza Strip. In that area, the area of the Federation would have a population of approximately 12 million inhabitants. 2/3 of them would be Jewish, and 1/3 of them would be Palestinian. The Gaza Strip would not be included in the political setup that we're proposing. This is the Gaza Strip. It has a population of about 2.5 million, and if they would be included in our political scheme, we wouldn't be able to get support in the Knesset, because no Knesset would support a 50-50 demography, which would be created with the Gaza Strip being part of it. 2/3, 1/3 demography, I think, is feasible, but the Gaza Strip will be left a separate Palestinian entity with we should get an airport and a port and border crossing arrangements, and so the Gaza Strip has been a separate entity between 1947 and 1967. It has been separate since 2005. It's a different population from the West Bank, so it has all the basis to be independent, and if given all the support it needs, that should not be a major problem. It's a problem conceptually, because the Palestinians always wanted to be together with Gaza and the West Bank, but I think they'll understand the advantages, and I think also people in Gaza can live with it.
What about security for the Israelis, given the past record of?
Well, the moment that the West Bank is going to be part of Israel and has equal rights, that basically takes away from the Hamas in Gaza the big support it has and needs. Okay, so Hamas in Gaza will have to come around.
What would a federal Israel constitution look like?
Well, a federal constitution. We were supposed to write a constitution for Israel in 1948. We didn't, and we are suffering from it badly. I think we're heading for a very deep constitutional crisis in Israel now. So I think there's a great awareness that a constitution has to be part of whatever future setup we're looking at. For a federation, the constitution is required to, first of all, set up the balance of powers between the cantons and the federal government, but also between the ethnic populations. We have to have the constitution has to protect the Jews from the Palestinians and the Palestinians from the Jews. And it would be a pretty basic constitution. There are lots of examples to look at. And it would be, of course, without a constitution, we could not look at a federation.
Okay. You're proposing that
yes.
the West Bank Palestinians have citizenship. Can you
yes.
talk about that, please?
Yes. We're talking about a population of approximately 2.5 million Palestinians who live in the West Bank, who presently don't have citizenship. A small part of them, about 10%, maybe a little bit more, those who live in East Jerusalem have residency, but the rest of them don't have citizenship. They don't have civil rights. They can't vote in the elections. That has to be, of course, has to change. They have to become full citizens of the federal state. And that's a basic requirement, basic premise. We can't. This should take a few years until it happens. The concern that Israelis have over this is it's going to cost a lot of money because of the national insurance we're going to have to pay to those citizens is, of course, mistaken, because a large part of the population are very young. And they're going to work, and they're going to supply, and they're going to pay in more into the insurance they're going to have to take out from the beginning. So, like, economically, this is a good move.
Okay, and a significant part of your plan is the Federation regional government, and the
yes.
30 cantons is key
yes.
to your proposal. Can you go over that, because that's
yes.
a new concept?
This is basically the division into regional government, like the main concept of a federation. Our proposal suggests 30 cantons. There's nothing special about the number 30. It's just we looked at at the model in Switzerland, which has 26 cantons, and we're pretty much similar in size in terms of population. So that's where we came to 30 in the end. There's only two conditions for the number of cantons. One is that the number of cantons has to reflect the demography. The number of Jewish majority cantons versus the number of Palestinian majority cantons has to reflect the demography of the country. And so 2/3, 1/3, like 20 Jewish cantons, 10 Palestinian cantons. And the Jewish and all the cantons have to have a clear majority, either Jewish or Palestinian. Those are the only terms. Other than that, the number of cantons is, we can have 18 cantons or 24 or 15. We chose 30. The advantage of having a bigger number of cantons is that when one of the cantons decides to go crazy, it won't make it have such a big impact on the whole federation. Okay, the federation, it's easier to keep everybody on track and under control when the cantons are not overpoweringly big. So that's the numbers of the cantons. Each canton will have to get its own regional government. And there will be a federal government in Jerusalem, which is here in gold, yellow in the middle, and have this budget. And only like Penny already said before, only foreign affairs and security issues will be dealt with by the federal government in Jerusalem.
So overall, what you're talking about is having regional governments, either Israeli or Palestinian, governing their own issues for the most part, except a few overarching federal issues, and maintaining a 2/3 Israeli majority and 1/3 Palestinian as far as the proportions.
Demography,
with the cantons. Okay.
Okay. Basically 80% of what's between the citizen and the state will be run by the canton, by the regional government.
Okay. And how does all this compare with what's happening in the Knesset today? Can you talk about...
Today we have 120 members of the Knesset in the lower house. Okay. What we would do, we would add an upper house to the Knesset, which would not only represent the population as a population, but the upper house would represent the cantons. So it's like similar to the Senate in the United States. Each canton would send 2 members, and that would basically result in a much more stable form of government, because in order to change the government, you would not only need the majority of the lower house, 120 out of the 120, which is basically decided by demography, but you would also need a majority of the cantons. Okay. So in order to, for example, the big fear of the Jewish population is to be all of a sudden being taken over by the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. For that to happen, the Palestinians would both need to be a majority in the country, all vote for one party or their party to get more of the, half of the, more than half of the lower house. But they would also have to change the majority status of 6 cantons, because they only have 10 out of 30. To get more than half, they need 16. So they have to move 6 cantons from Jewish majority to Palestinian majority, which is feasible technically, because everybody can move anywhere, but it's never going to happen. Or by the time it happens, nobody's going to give a damn who's in the majority. Okay.
Well, yeah, that seems like Well, it's hard to imagine. Let's put it that way.
Yes, it
In
is.
Israel.
I think
Sorry.
yeah, the main aim of this whole operation, other than the political concept, of course, is the economic unity. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that both in the Declaration of Independence of Israel and also in the separation proposal of the United Nations in 1947,
Mm-hmm.
it was called for the economic unity in the whole land in the whole area was called for, and that's the big challenge. Israeli and Palestinian societies are economically very complementary. They complement each other. The Palestinians have there's a lot of working force, and they have relatively high education, so they would be a good complement to Israel's high-tech industry. There was an article several years ago in The Economist which clarified that Israel will not be able to continue growing unless it takes on the Palestinians as workforce also in the high-tech industries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a huge boon to the area. There won't be any lack of money.
Awesome. So you wanted to get back to the
Yeah,
refugee.
I think it's important that the refugee issue is critical. People should be aware of the fact that it's a highly emotional issue. That the Palestinians are clearly aware of the fact that they cannot all return to the area. Any kind of reasonable arrangement, and we are proposing reasonable arrangement, which is comprised of several ways of dealing with it. One of them, settling the Palestinians in third countries, settling those who live here already here, compensating others who live abroad, and also take in, to the extent that it's possible, Palestinians who want to return. It's possible to do that. It's very difficult to talk about it. But once we have our vision in place, I think it will be a lot easier to even deal with this highly emotional issue.
Well, there's so many benefits to your proposal. I'd like to go over each of them. First of all, strongest is the thought of having peace.
Yes, the benefits are enormous, of course. And I think it's a recognition of the fact that both people, they do not want to separate. Or they want to live separately, but they want to live separately in one country. That's really what the bottom line is. If you analyze the poll results, okay, Israelis they don't want a Palestinian state. They want to live separate, which is fine. Everybody in his canton. This is what the federation offers. It offers exactly that, to live together but separately.
And improve security, to
Yes,
get rid of all the attacks and so on. Can you talk about how your proposal will really help with that?
Well, the moment everybody is a citizen, okay, and we don't have the situation where we have 2.5 million or 4.5 million people who are not citizens and who don't share all the benefits of citizenship and all the economic benefits of living in an advanced country. As long as we don't have that, we all have the potential for terrorism and resistance. So the moment we get that into our peace into place, security will come without any problem.
The international recognized permanent borders, such a bone of contention, with the terminology of Israel taking over and so on and
well,
so
then this will all fall into place. The moment the Palestinians, obviously the Palestinians will have to vote on agreeing to live in this canton system. Once they've done that, no international body will challenge it, obviously.
Right. It's just getting away from the whole occupation terminology.
Yeah, it won't be relevant. It won't be relevant anymore.
Yeah. And certainly with the different relationships that seem to be improving and expanding between Israel and other Arab countries and the Abrahamic Accords.
Yeah, that'd be a huge difference then, because right now all these relations are between Israel, between the Israeli, between Israel and the regimes of those government of those countries. Okay, the moment the Palestinians have become part of our citizenship, and have equal rights, those relations will extend also to the peoples in those countries, okay, which is a very, very big difference, okay. That's not the case right now.
And just having cultural autonomy and the respect for both sides, that's always been such a huge issue. You want to talk about the impact on that?
I think at the moment, basically, people live in their own autonomous areas, and they have their own autonomy within the bounds, of course, of the federal constitution. Okay, we won't have a situation where either there can be a halachic canton or Sharia canton. But we'll give maximum autonomy within the bounds of a federal constitution to both Jews and Palestinians and Druze, and I think that's what a liberal democracy has to afford, and I think everybody is looking forward to that.
Can you? Not all of our audience understands halachic or Sharia.
Jewish law, it means Jewish religious law, and Sharia is Islamic religious law. Okay, so when I say that that the Constitution will not permit that, because those are not liberal concepts. Okay, so there will obviously have to be separation of religion and state in our federation, which will be an added bonus. But we won't be able to have a situation where the country is highly biased towards the Jewish religion as it is now. It will be in the cantons that will be feasible, of course, in the Jewish cantons, but in the Palestinian cantons not, and vice versa. So there will be autonomy to a large degree within the bounds of a liberal constitution.
Awesome. And the West Bank Palestinian improvements are significant. First of all, having citizenship with equal rights. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, this is the main issue today. They're not citizens. They can't vote. They can't participate in the democratic process. They have to take what they're being dealt, the card they're being dealt with. And that's the basis for all the resistance to Israel's occupation. The moment they have citizens, that actually was the original proposal of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, to have a democratic state for all citizens. So we're coming full circle, okay, for the Palestinians, and they should have no problem accepting that. Of course, they will feel a little bit uncomfortable not being in the majority, but it's definitely a lot better than what they have now.
And they'll have access to medical and health services.
Yes, they'll be, as every citizen in Israel has. Israel has a health law which gives everybody health insurance and compulsory health insurance for everybody. Unlike the United States, and they will integrate into the Israeli economy, which will give a huge boon to the Israeli economy. The whole population has a lot more. That'll be a lot more wealth to the population.
The ability to reduce the violence and the hatred and the terror motivation. Have you talked much with your Palestinian colleagues and got from them what they think about the likelihood of this with your proposal?
Yeah, they for them it's clear. They're in a position where they say already We don't care what it says on the passport. As long as we have equal rights, everything will be fine. Okay, and that makes a lot of sense because they're wasting a lot of energy on resistance today because they're really suffering. Okay, they're really suffering from the unequal situation from what's happening under the occupation, which is really not good. I mean, from the beginning of the year till today, they have had a huge number of casualties as a result of violence between the population and the Israeli army, and they want to get away from that, and that's one way.
By doing this, their educational and cultural system would be supported as well. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Like every canton has its own autonomy in education and culture, and other than a core curriculum, which will be federal also, so, like civic studies and history and languages. Other than that, they can teach their kids what they want. And they can promote Palestinian culture, and they can fly the Palestinian flag, which in the Palestinian cantons. There's no problem with that.
Okay. So you want to maintain the ethnic, religious, and cultural diversity, which obviously is something that shows respect to both sides.
Absolutely.
And where anybody could live where they choose to?
Anybody can live where they choose to. They can vote only in one canton, in the canton where they're registered, but they can live where they want to live.
And
like any normal country.
And obviously there's a commitment to helping the refugees.
Yes, we talked about that. And they have to be rehabilitated. Those who live here have to be rehabilitated on site, and we have to support also rehabilitation of refugees abroad. But like I said, it's an emotional issue. Technically, it's possible to deal with it, and we think we know how to.
And this will get rid of the various international boycotts.
Yeah, that will there will be. I think initially there will be resistance to what we propose because everybody will suspect that we're not going to give them equal rights. But once everybody understands that this is a serious proposal, there won't be any major boycotts against it.
So that would improve foreign relations and
absolutely
possibly open up new markets.
Yes, the whole Arab world would open up to it, and it would be a huge boon economically for the whole area.
Right, and more benefits. Obviously, the economic benefits due to the regional integration.
Yeah, Israel would become part of the Middle East. We're not now we are some kind of extension of Europe in the Middle East. If we would become a federation, we would become part of the Middle East for real, and that would be a huge benefit for all the countries in the area.
And then even more economic opportunities out of that. Having a stable democracy, that is so important. And in the area, that's not too common, unfortunately. You want to talk about that?
About a stable democracy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things federation does, it improves democracy. Because what it does, that the regional government is closer to the population than if you have a central government, only a central government. They know who's running the show, and they can vote them out of office at a higher. They are much more connected to what's going on. So the democracy is more closer to the people, and it will be more stable by definition.
And It's obvious benefit. The people are running the show, not so much just one person in charge, uh,
Yes.
like other local states. The canton reallocation flexibility. Can you talk about that a bit more?
The cantons, the borders of the cantons are completely secondary. Okay, what I mean by that is that if right now the cantons are basically a grouping of existing municipalities.
Mhm.
If one particular municipality doesn't want to be in that canton, there's no problem for it assigning it to another canton, even if there's no direct connection on the ground to that. You know, there could be an island in one canton
Mhm.
which belongs to another canton. This is all very, very flexible as long as we maintain the two basic concepts that each canton has to be major majority, a big majority, either Palestinian or Jewish, and the
Mhm.
number of cantons has to reflect the demography, the demographic balance. But other than that, you know, we can draw the lines wherever we want to. In any case, there are going to be cantons which are smaller and poorer, and there are those that are going to be bigger and richer. And there has to be reallocation of resources, of course. But that's also like that in the unitary state. Obviously, Tel Aviv, the citizens of Tel Aviv pay a lot of money to citizens in other parts of the country, and the canton of Tel Aviv will also pass a lot of money to other cantons. But that can be organized, and the federations that are in existence, they know how to do that, and we'll know how to do that too.
The whole canton administration it's not limited to territory, and it has its own autonomy and the benefits associated with that.
Yeah, the cantons are as independent as can possibly be, which means they can also you know they have control over the land they have, and they can also generate income by you know by selling bonds and things like that. So they're not only dependent on the federal government for their budgeting. There's a lot
Awesome.
of flexibility and a lot of dispersal of the economy.
Okay. And continuing on, we
Yeah,
avoid the costly West Bank settlement withdrawal because that
yeah.
would
The
quite
the
expensive, both financially as well as emotionally.
Yeah, I think the main issue with the West Bank withdrawal is, first of all, it's politically not feasible. Okay, while it's still physically feasible to withdraw 140,000 Israelis who are living beyond the wall. It's not possible to arrive at the decision, and that actually one of the big benefits of the federation proposal is that there won't be a withdrawal, which would be costly if anybody could affect it, but it's just not feasible. So that's being avoided, and that's a huge benefit of our proposal.
What's the
Uh,
impact of having a more broad Arab middle class?
Well, you know, first of all, middle class is what democracy makes. So the more you have more Arabs you have joining the middle class, the more they will be democratic, and that'll benefit the whole country. Okay, that's an obvious benefit.
And
But,
we've
but
already talked.
the same goes also for the Jewish population. Okay, there's a considerable part of the Jewish population which is not middle class yet. Okay, so the economic benefits are for the whole population, and they're clear.
And we've talked quite a lot about the different markets opening up to Israeli exports, and I'm certain probably imports as well. There's and the not having the settlements disrupted is just something that seems to be uh, very necessary for the comfort of the Jewish Israelis, for sure.
Yes, I think they will see a big the main benefit of our proposal in not having to deal with this issue of withdrawing the settlements or taking out the settlers.
Now, of course, there's lots of benefits, but there are challenges. So a huge one is that you're proposing disbanding the Palestinian Authority. What kind of pushback are you expecting on that?
Well, I think that first of all, this will come naturally if there's an alternative to the Palestinian Authority. First of all, the people who are in the Palestinian Authority are invited to put themselves up for election as part of the canton government. If they will be voted in, they can, be there, do the governing there, and I'm sure some of them will. I don't think the Palestinians are going to cry a lot over the disbanding of the Palestinian Authority, which isn't doing too well with their population. So that's not really such a big. I don't think that's as big a problem as it may seem.
Okay, well, it seems like the leadership might have a bigger problem than.
Yeah, they might, but they'll have to deal with the votes from of their people. If they vote for joining the federation, then that's that.
Mm-hmm. Maintaining national identities and a bi-multinational federation. That's
a big challenge. I think that's a complex issue, and that's a big challenge for both people. I think both people are very much concerned about losing their national identity. Okay, by joining in a federal state, which is by nature the citizenship will be Israeli for that matter. Okay, so there will be Jewish Israelis and there will be Palestinian Israelis. Jews are concerned of losing their Jewish identity, which is they always are, although it's always getting stronger and stronger all the time. But nevertheless, they are. And Palestinians obviously are worried about losing their Palestinian identity. But the fact that the cantons are basically autonomous culturally and are willing, and can keep the national identities thriving is a big advantage, and I think both populations will get used to the new arrangement.
Always wondered when I read your the different federation proposals. In this one, I wondered, did you ever consider changing the name to make it more palatable for both sides?
The correct name for this political arrangement would be the Federal Republic of Israel and Palestine. That would be the correct name. Okay. But I don't think the Jewish population would be, and that's the one which we'll have to come to an agreement on that. More than the Palestinians, the Jewish population will not be ready for that. I don't think so. I think if we get to the stage where we start arguing over the name, we're in good shape. I think
when you get to that point.
Yeah, if we get to that stage, I think Palestinians will be able to live with a state of all citizens called Israel, if it indeed will be a state of all citizens, and they will have equal rights like we propose. Obviously, there is a price to being in the minority, and that's one of them. That the majority will probably insist on keeping the name as it is.
The cultural beliefs on both sides must be sensitively addressed to avoid creating barriers to resolution. That's always been such a huge.
Time will do a lot. I think with the moment the enmity is taken out by creating a situation where both sides can live with each other in close vicinity and working together.
The law of return is a sticky point. Obviously, the Jews have always had this law of return, and it gets complicated with the Palestinians. Can you describe how you're proposing that each of those would work a little bit more? Because that's always seems like a flashpoint.
Yeah, well, I think the law of return, both for Jews and Palestinians, is an anomaly. I think it, of course, reflects, the emotions and the needs of both people at a certain moment in time. But I think once we get to the federation, we have to talk about normalizing the immigration law. When I say normalizing immigration law, I mean that everybody who has roots in Israel, Palestine, shall be able to apply to come and live here for citizenship, and the country and the state will determine who can based on economic conditions, based on number of citizens in different cantons, and there will be quotas for immigration, which will initially the idea of the quotas is to maintain the population balance as long as that is relevant for the people. Looking at the numbers and the prospective numbers of people who could come on to immigrate, no matter what, if you put normal quotas, there will always be enough, the quotas will always be big enough to accept anybody who really wants to immigrate. Okay, so this is also, it's a highly loaded emotional issue, which can be practically being dealt with in a way which will be agreeable to both sides.
Awesome. And your book.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, my book is basically it's an autobiography. It describes my, growing up in Europe and coming on Aliyah and finding my way to this proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good read because it describes my some part of my professional career in the Mossad,
Mm-hmm.
and in the Israeli Air Force. And I think it shows how my past has has influenced my political way of thinking. I think that's the most interesting part of the book.
I see. And I always like to ask a few personal questions while we're talking about you uh, and your autobiography. And what got you involved with wanting to develop this federation movement?
I was active in the Labour Party, and I always was very interested in the political process. And when I realized that the two-state solution isn't going anywhere, I was looking for alternatives, and I came across my friend Ari Hess, who was dabbling in federations, and that's when it all fell together. It all came together. I realized that that's the way to do it, and the more time passes, the stronger my conviction gets regarding that.
And what made you move to Israel?
Well, maybe I think the
What
first
made you
of all,
decide to? Nothing made, I don't think, but
First of all, when I discovered I wanted to come to Israel even before I discovered my Jewish ancestry. Okay, which is kind of strange, but I think I felt at the time that I had the opportunity to visit Israel when I was 9 years old, and I remembered it then when I got to the ripe old age of 16 when I came again, and when I came at the age of 16, it just blew me away, and I fell in love with the country, and I felt that in Germany I could not do what I could do here, so it all came together. You got to read the book to read the whole story.
yeah. So you're from Germany. You're parents, were they involved in the Holocaust at all?
My father, may he rest in peace, was a Holocaust survivor.
Oh,
He was in German prisons and concentration camps for 9 years. He
oy.
lost his first wife and daughter, my sister, in Auschwitz, and he somehow survived. He thinks he survived because he was kept with the political prisoners, not with the Jews. And my mom, he met my mom after the war. She was very much younger than him. She converted for him, even though he didn't ask for that, being a communist. But it was important to her. So that's a little bit about my ancestry. But again, you got to read the book.
That's a good segue. I wanted to put up this last slide.
Yeah, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
something that I think that's always on.
It's always on people's minds, and I think Jerusalem will be a magnet. Once we get our federation in place, people will be able to pray together on the Temple Mount, and there won't be any argument.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, inshallah.
Well, thanks, Emanuel, for outlining another interesting federation proposal moving peace forward. Next week on Peace with Penny, we'll be switching gears for our final Peace with Penny episode of the year and talking about a project that was held for Thanksgiving. It's an annual interfaith project for our synagogue, local mosque, and church, where food donations are made by our congregations for a Thanksgiving meal, as well as other food donations are collected. I believe it's a demonstration of what can be accomplished when religions work together in a form of peace. There were Jews, Muslims, and Christians all packing food for 250 families who are struggling today to make ends meet and who are helped daily by an organization called Families Forward. There is a misconception that homeless people don't work. Often that's not true, but they don't earn enough to put a roof over their heads and food on their table for their children. During this holiday season, as we enjoy time with our families at Peace with Penny, we hope that you'll take some time to think of those who want the same things we want for our families and find a way to share your gifts in abundance with them. It will help you achieve a greater sense of peace of mind. We hope you have a great week. And as always, we pray that everyone someday will live in peace, shalom, and salam.